Hi there, folks. I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I'm offering this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, for the soul. It's titled, Calm in the Storm. We are in the boat together. So I invite us just to still ourselves. Let's invite a loving presence to be here amongst us and to awaken from deep, deep within us all. Let's join in the song of creation. Sing joyfully the song of life, the song to the eternal. Let the earth and her children break forth in song. Let the sky and its creatures in chorus reply. Let the sea and all that is within it sound out praise. Let the storms raise their voices, the river clap their hands, and the mountains echo a verse from the rocky peaks. May we sing with great rejoicing, so that we can fulfill our part in the great choir of all creation. May we sing the joy of living in all its mystery. Now, recently, instead of meeting folk just in coffee shops, just for a chat, people always want to talk to me, I've taken to go for gentle walks, side by side, down to Stamford Park in Altrincham. I love to wander side by side, listening and talking. In some ways, conversations, like when they're held like this, seem to flow more freely when you sit face to face with someone. And I think this is how it should be, neither leading nor following, simply accompanying one another. And as we walk, it's lovely to watch all the creatures in the park. I love the dog owners too, and their dogs in so many different shapes and sizes, every shape and size you can imagine. And one of my favourites actually is a woman who sits alone on a bench and reads with, well, not quite alone, for next to her is a faithful little terrier who always sits by her side, never moves. She's obviously not bothered by the cold, as she's there no matter what time of day. Whenever I go to the park, she's sat there reading with her little terrier sat next to her. Beautiful. I also love to pause at the ponds and stop for a while, talking while watching the ducks and the geese and the other creatures that land on the pond. These ducks and geese are they're interestingly graceful in their own way, who seem to be just floating along almost effortlessly. Of course, it's not effortless, isn't it? All the work goes on beneath the surface, and yet they just float along as if calm. There is another creature that always floats along with them, kind of a little bit alone. He seems to want to be alone, and he seems to bully all the mallards, actually. They never get too close to him. He looks like a kind of duck, I think he is anyway, but he's much, much bigger than the mallards. He's the size, really, of the Canada geese. But he has the head and the plumage of a mallard, a male mallard. And yet some of his other plumage is very much like the geese. As I watch him bullying the other mallards and keeping them away from him, my imagination sometimes plays tricks on me, and I wonder, could he be a mixture of a Canada goose and a mallard? Is that even possible? I often joke with the folks as I stand there watching this bully, really, this horrible thing. He's beautiful, but he seems to have a unique personality. He's different. He's alone on that pond, and he seems to like to be alone. Won't let any of the others near him. Anybody identify with that? I used to be like that. Can be sometimes still. Now we're currently in storm season, aren't we? Deadly Eunice and Dudley, not quite as Dudley this week. It's funny, but by giving them names, we kind of make them very friendly, give them a human form, don't we? Which, of course, they're not friendly, are they, at all? Such weather has led to devastation in parts of, certainly in the south of England and Wales, last night, well, this week. Not so much here in Cheshire. I went for a walk before the storm and I went for a walk after the storm. It's been rather, in fact, I went for a walk in the middle of the storm, actually, if I'm honest. It wasn't so bad. It was wild, but it was wild and wonderful, as the song goes. But I know for others it's been quite deadly and highly destructive. I kind of liked it, but I know it's not been that way for everyone. And there are other storms brewing, of course, aren't there? Troubles in Eastern Europe, could be going to war there. The economic crisis that we're in, fears about the rising cost of living, how folk are going to cope. There are other more personal storms that we all face too. My phone hasn't stopped all week, you know. So many folks struggling and suffering with one thing and another. I've met with many people this week. I've listened, I've shared with so many. It would have been easy to have become overwhelmed by it all, to think this is too much for me. Each demand was completely unaware of the other demand, focused on their own troubles. So I have continued to pause, as I always do, to center down, to connect to that place of stillness, that calm, that God that I believe is in me and in everything. To do what I'm able to do in each situation, to deal with one thing after another. And don't get me wrong, I haven't been as graceful as a swan this week. I'm more like a duck, I think. I've kept on returning, though, to that calm, to the still, small voice deep down within everything. It has enabled me to face most of what has needed to be faced this week. In fact, it's done so for many, many, many years now. But you know, it takes effort. And like the ducks, it doesn't mean I don't flap about from time to time. And it doesn't mean that I don't go under the water, duck under from time to time, but never for too long. At the end of each day, I've spent a little time reflecting, connecting, tying up the loose ends, and then being able to sleep. I've been sleeping deeply this week. I've not been awoken by the storms at my window like so many others, it seems. And then the next day, I begin again with my consideration of the little things I have witnessed the day before and shared them, as well as my other daily morning devotions. None of this stops the storms, nor does it protect me from the damage that will inevitably be wrought by the storms of life. Although it doesn't protect me completely, it does keep me safe though. And most importantly, it enables me to continue on and to repair the damage that is done. The damage that is mine to repair, of course. And perhaps most importantly, it enables me to journey with others as they sometimes become overwhelmed by the storms of life. Several times this week, I have driven with friends to one place or another, talking but mainly listening to either their troubles or the troubles of those in their lives. I have walked and talked with others. Several have called round and have visited folks in their homes and have visited folk in the hospital in a desperate state. We have faced the storms together side by side. It has felt at times like we've got in a boat together, if you like, in the same boat and faced the storms of life together. Not rescuing one another, but sailing together through the storm together, sailing side by side, facing the storm, getting in somebody else's boat and facing their storm with them, if only for a short time. Now, storm season brings to mind a favourite story of mine. It's actually an extract from a book titled Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom. The book is set over an 8-year period and explores the lives of two seemingly ordinary but actually, if truth be told, extraordinary men. One is the author's childhood rabbi, Albert Lewis, and the other is a former drug addict and criminal, Henry Covington, who spends his time serving a community of homeless people and addicts in a run-down former church. Both characters describe coming through many struggles and storms, but doing so with grace and with love, and by the power of service, whilst accompanying others through their storms of life. It describes the power of living by just a little faith, And what a difference living by just a little faith, what a difference that makes. Their lives are lives full of questions and struggles and doubts, but they have a faith by which they can live, and they live by it. So the following is a short extract really from a sermon that's in the book that was delivered by the rabbi. It's a great story. A man seeks employment on a farm. He hands his letter of recommendation to his new employer. It reads simply, he sleeps in a storm. The owner is desperate for help, so he hires the man. Several weeks pass, and suddenly, in the middle of the night, a powerful storm rips through the valley. Awakened by the swirling rain and howling wind, the owner leaps out of bed. He calls for his new hired hand, but the man is sleeping soundly. So he dashes off to the barn. He sees to his amazement that the animals are all secure with plenty of feed. He runs out to the field. He sees the bales of wheat have been bound and wrapped in tarpaulins. He races to the silo. The doors are latched and the grain is dry. And then he understands. He sleeps in a storm. My friends, if we tend to the things that are important in life, if we are right with those we love and behave in line with our beliefs, our lives will not be cursed by the aching throb of unfulfilled business. Our words will always be sincere. Our embraces will be tight. We will never wallow in the agony of, I could have, I should have. We can sleep in a storm. And when it's time, our goodbyes will be complete. Wonderful story, don't you think? I love it. We cannot stop the storms from striking, whether this be the stormy weather or the troubles caused externally to us by forces way beyond our control, or by the ones that strike much closer at hand, or the ones that grow from deep inside our own being. That said, there is much we can do about how we are during the storms, how we live within them, and how we accompany one another through them. We don't sail this ship alone. One thing is for sure is that none of us have to face those storms alone, not completely. There is help at hand. And we don't need any special power to do it, just the ordinary humankind will do. But we do need to be prepared, and this is where spiritual practice comes, so we can connect to that power that's already there. A calm mind and a still heart are essential. It's said, that Gandhi loved storms. He began life as a timid child, but he learned to keep his mind so steady that he could face tremendous crises with courage, compassion, wisdom, and even a sense of humour. A sense of humour is vital in helping us through such storms, And remember, to be in good humour, what that originally meant is that you're in good health, the umers of the body. We have the capacity to deal with whatever challenges life throws at us, but we do need a calm mind and a still heart to draw on those resources deep within us. We also need to accompany one another, to encourage each other when life just seems too much. Whenever I consider Jesus' attempts to teach his disciples, I often think that the fact that they couldn't find this power within themselves was a tremendous frustration from him. His frustrations with them came from this. I know this is perhaps an unorthodox view, but then that's me. I'm fairly unorthodox and all that. But I think that this is what he was trying to teach those that followed him, to find that power, to find that still small voice within. And it's certainly something that he did himself when he took time alone to commune with God. In Mark 4, during the passage titled The Calming of the Storm, Jesus rebukes the frightened disciples who have woken him up as he slept through the storm. Have you no faith, he said? And he tells them off. because he knows that they can be calm in the storm. They just don't have the faith in themselves to calm the storm themselves, to come through the storm. He shows them the way. But the thing is, the disciples, being people of that area of Galilee, they come through such storms before. Some of them were fishermen. And it was very common in the Sea of Galilee for such storms to suddenly rise up from nowhere. It's a beautiful place, been. It's just the most beautiful place in the world. But instead, the disciples become enthralled by his ability to calm the sea, rather than have enough faith in themselves to come through it together, side by side, not alone, but together, side by side in their boat. Have you no faith, he said. Have a little faith, I say. You don't need a lot, but you need enough. When the storms strike, we do not have to face them alone, although it's our responsibility to play our role fully. We must be responsible. Our responsibility is to support one another in the storms of life. And there's real power in being together like this, so long as we don't completely depend on someone to take us out of the storm, to stop the storm for us. We have to play our role fully. We have to be responsible. And it's important that we get in the boat with each other at times, to be side by side, not to rescue each other, but just to be there together when the wind is really blowing and life seems too much. Not to rescue one another, but to face the storm together, to be responsible for ourselves and for one another, to care, to truly care. We do not need to fear the storms that will come in life. We cannot stop them. And when they come, we can't avoid them. You can't go around them. You've got to go through them. But we don't have to be destroyed by them. We have all that we need to come through within each and every one of us. It's vital that we take care of this and that we bring this to life, this love that I call God that's within it, within everything, that's within us, to bring that to life. And it's equally as important to stand side by side with each other and face the storms together. We never have to walk alone. When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high. Walk on, walk on. With hope in your hearts, walk on. We're not here to rescue one another, but we need to get in the boat together sometimes and help one another. Help one another face these storms, these very real storms of life. Storms will strengthen us as we move forward in life, and we will be able to encourage one another when we're all too afraid at times to face the storm, when the storm's brewing. Because we all lose faith that we can weather the storm again. Everybody does from time to time. And it's important to help one another to just have a little faith. Not a lot, just enough. To be responsible. I'm going to end this devotion with another story. We all like stories, don't we? It's taken from Rites of Justice, the Sacraments and Liturgy as Ethical Imperatives by Megan McKenna. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a master violin maker. His instruments were exquisite, and the sound that could be drawn forth from them was beyond description. He only accepted a small number of apprentices, and he took them through the long and arduous process of making a violin, from the choice of the tree to how to string the piece to the very end, after the varnish, through the whole process. There was one apprentice, an especially adept one, who had trouble with only one aspect of the process, the choice of wood. He had mastered all the other levels, but would balk at the choice of which tree to mark and cut to form the base of the violin. Finally, the master took him out to the forest again. It was the dead of winter, a frightfully cold and windy day, with snow swirling and ice thickly hung in all the trees. They walked north, and the master started marking out the trees. "Why?" the apprentice queried. "Why these?" The master answered. They face due north, and they take the brunt of the wind, the chill, and the ice. They make the best violins. They returned. The storm grew stronger, and the student asked his master, Master, doesn't it bother you to think about the trees that you marked standing alone in the wind, standing against all this ice and fury? Have you no pity for them? The master eyed him, and he smiled. No, not at all. You see, they are being tuned. Can you hear that wind tuning? Maybe that's what happens to us as we come through another storm. Maybe we become better tuned so that we can encourage one another when the storms strike and it all seems too much. We can get in each other's boats and encourage one another to keep on sailing through the storm. Remember, Gandhi loved the storms, for he believed that the trials and tribulations brought out the best in each of us. The storms did this. Jesus wanted his followers, his disciples, to learn to trust that they could weather the storm themselves, that they didn't need the storm calming by him. They could come through it together. Don't the storms do this to us? They do if we have taken care of what we can. For the storms enable us to become more loving and sensitive to the needs of others. Thus we will understand when we need to accompany others, to journey side by side with them, and encourage them to face whatever storm comes their way. Also, when the time comes when we lose our faith in our ability to face the next storm, we will be equipped to allow others to get in the boat and journey with us. We will be able to ask them to help us when we need someone to journey through the next storm, when our faith is tested too, when life seems too much. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can any of us? Let's join in this tune, in the great harmony of life together, side by side. Let's journey on together. I'm going to end this devotion with some final words of blessing. These words by Joel Miller, let our lives be a prayer. You know, we can all bless. It takes no special skill, no special power, no special person. And we bless by giving our whole selves to life. Let our lives be a prayer that waters dry souls, mends broken hearts, refuses to be terrorized, seeks this world's beauty, and carries us through its storms. May we be guided by God's love, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Amen.